Hello and good morning, everyone. Hydrate, huh? Right off the bat, right as I say anything. Hello there, Katie. Welcome. Give me a second. I'm currently hydrating. Welcome to the stream. Today, more theme park history. All I have is just some cold water right now. All right. Here's one I've been wanting to watch since last stream. Orlando's abandoned religious theme park. The controversial history of the Holy Land experience.
Orlando, Florida is known for some of the best theme parks anywhere in the world, from the excitement of seeing Cinderella's castle to riding the movies at Universal Studios. The tourist destination in Central Florida has it all. There is, however, one theme park that took a different approach, where rather than take pictures with Mickey Mouse, it was Jesus Christ himself that was the star. A place full of controversy that operated for nearly 20 years before closing its doors and left nearly abandoned.
Experience love.
A Jesus theme park.
Experience peace. Experience joy.
Some people really have too much money.
Experience Jesus at TVN's Holy Land Experience.
Ever heard of Disneyland? No. Only in America would this would happen? Yep. For sure. Only in America. You tried to do this anywhere else in the world, they'd be like, no. They wouldn't even give you, like, the city wouldn't even give you the time of day.
In August of 1989, Marvin Rosenthal and his wife, Marbeth, traveled to Orlando, Florida. Marvin was raised Jewish in Philadelphia and later became a Christian as a teenager after he saw his mum reading the New Testament and her life transformed. After graduating from Philadelphia College of the Bible, Marvin was ordained a Baptist minister at age 33 in New Jersey. The former Marine moved to Orlando as he believed he would be able to reach out to more people in the up-and-coming tourist destination of Central Florida. With its good airport and growing Jewish population, it seemed the perfect spot to spread his message. After 16 years as president and director of a worldwide Christian ministry designed to share the gospel of Jesus Christ with Jewish people and the Jewishness of the gospel with Christians, he set out to form his new ministry. Starting over from their own living room, they launched Zion's Hope. The name was chosen from Psalm 53:6. Through books, letters, magazines, and colourful publications, Zion's Hope grew, with them stating that they now reached over 10,000 people. During the 90s, Rosenthal used solicited donor funds to purchase a 15-acre plot of land in Orlando's tourist corridor, starting the construction of his ministry complex. The 18.6-acre site along Interstate 4 near John Young Parkway was chosen in part because of its proximity to the area's attractions. Universal Studios was right around the corner and just a mile away. In 1997, the first phase of Zion's Hope Complex opened. The $2.5 million structure with a 25-foot tall tower took the form of a 20,000 square foot conference center and exhibit space. The site would aim to host conferences for missionaries from various evangelical Protestant denominations. On display would be a 45-foot long and 25-foot wide scale model of 1st century Jerusalem. Tours were offered for free to see the huge model, and it became one of the highlights for those visiting. But Marvin Rosenthal had bigger plans for the new home of his church. He wanted to create a replica of the Holy Land that could allow people to experience Israel as it was in Jesus' time. The money raised for the project came from sponsors, donations, and the sale of 4 acres of their land for the development of an exit off Interstate 4. The site was just getting started and had plans to expand into a $10 million complex within 6 to 8 years.
$10 million, 6 to 8 years? What the hell? Some people really have... Oh, god damn it.
You leave it enough.
Nope, you get no ad time here. Go away.
From the start, the site of Zion's Hope Complex was surrounded by controversy. While founder Marvin Rosenthal stated repeatedly that Zion's Hope was an evangelical, Bible-believing faith ministry with the goal to share the message that Jesus is the Messiah, some called the complex a worldwide center aimed at converting Jewish people to Christianity, and it began to draw criticism from local rabbis. These local rabbis stated that any attempt to lead Jewish people away from Judaism to some other faith is a de facto declaration that Judaism is a false faith. They stated the whole center was hurtful and insulting to the Jewish people of Orlando. Rosenthal ignored the claims and continued on with his plans.
Wow.
Central Florida had a theme park for nearly everyone and had recently added 2 more huge attractions to its offerings: Animal Kingdom in 1998 and Islands of Adventure in 1999. Many of the attractions and areas of Islands of Adventure have been built by iTech Entertainment Corporation, a global leader in themed entertainment design founded in 1985. They had worked on many ride systems for both Universal and Disney World. That very same company would now create Orlando's newest themed experience. Those visiting Orlando to see Mickey, ride
God.
the movies, or head under the sea now had a new option. They could visit Jesus at the Holy Land Experience, the place where the Bible was set to come to life. iTech conducted extensive research to ensure the historical accuracy of the project, attempting to create a total sensory experience that transported guests 7,000 miles away and over 2,000 years back in time. They had 3 main goals: to create a wholesome, family-oriented, and an educational facility where people could come and reinforce their faith; to create a total immersion experience that offered historical proof of the Bible; and to lovingly share the message of the Word of God.
A lot of people think of it as a theme park, but this is actually a ministry. It's like any other church organization that they would do.
Sure.
We employ only those that are Christians.
Religious-based tourist attractions were not new, and for over a century many had come and gone throughout the United States. None had ever been planned on the scale and cost of this. Announced in August 1999, planned to cost over $10 million, the Holy Land Experience would aim to transport visitors back in time in an offering that was promoted to be educational, historical, theatrical, and inspirational. Protests against the upcoming attraction began nearly instantly after the announcement. Zion's Hope denied that the park would be used for evangelism. Orlando rabbis continue to argue that the word Zion would attract Jewish tourists to the site and present them with a false representation of what their ancestors experienced 2 millennia ago, aiming to convert them to Christianity.
We're not here to bang anyone over the head and say, you have to become our religious denomination. We're a non-denominational organization, but we passionately believe in the Word of God. If you have the cure for a disease, what kind of person would you be if you didn't freely share it with other people? And we want to be able to share what we believe is a cure for the sin condition of all humankind throughout the world.
Marvin Rosenthal continued to defend the project and said the attraction was designed simply to convey the message of the Bible while leaving open any conclusions people have themselves. with the attraction being available to everyone. As the area's first religious tourism attraction, other concerns include the risk of tourists seeing it as an effect to commercialize religion. Rosenthal stated they had no political agenda with the park and that their only commitment is to the Bible and God's Word.
I like to hope that some people who come will wind up going back home and saying, I've got to give God more time in my life, and will wind up going to a good Bible-believing church.
The 10-acre area site will be built adjacent to the church's existing headquarters, and groundbreaking would commence in September 1999 with a planned autumn 2000 opening. After delays, it opened on February 5th, 2001, for a final cost of $16 million, extremely over budget. The Holy Land experience would be unlike anything Orlando had seen before. As visitors entered through the Roman-themed arch, they would see the landscape grounds of the park, full of giant date palms, olive trees, and thorn trees, among many other different types of purposely chosen landscaping. Designed by David Roadcup of iTech Entertainment, the park would recreate the land of Israel shortly after Jesus' death with a replica of the limestone caves of Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. To build the replica, more than 500,000 pounds of concrete were used.
Jeez.
The Wilderness Tabernacle, recreated in 3/4 scale, was home to a 20-minute live show with an actor portraying Aaron, the brother of Moses, recreating priesthood rituals. The Temple of the Great King was a 6-story replica of Herod's temple, which was built to house God's presence. It was recreated here at 1/2 scale. The 13 rounded steps out of the temple's main entrance provided another venue for shows and concerts in the Theatre of Life. Inside, a 20-minute film shot on location in Jerusalem could be found. Outside was a garden known as the Cavalry's Garden Tomb, in reference to where Christians believe Jesus was buried after his crucifixion and rose from the dead 3 days later. Visitors would enter a recreation of Jesus' tomb and be able to pray, read the scriptures, and reflect on the events that had occurred there. Actors and musicians would depict the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus throughout the day. They would also recite biblical passages, and live offerings could be found all throughout the park.
Were you there when he rose up from the dead? Were you there when he rose up from the dead?
Do you know who
Oh,
helped
God.
lead the charge to restrict abortion?
Nope, no political ad time here. Go away.
150,000 visitors annually to break even. Originally, price admission was to be between $8 and $12, but due to blooming construction costs and delays, that would rise considerably by the time the park had opened. The Holy Land experience had other ways to try and make money within. Those visiting could purchase merchandise in the Jerusalem Street Marketplace with craftsmen and themed shops, including the Old Scroll Shop, which offered artifacts, Bibles, and gifts. To eat, you could choose items including hummus or tackle the Goliath burger at the Oasis Cafe. With no rides like the bigger parks nearby, the Holy Land experience's main draw would be the multiple theatre shows with special effects, all offered at a production level rarely found in a theme park. Throughout the year, shows would rotate with multiple different ones shown each day. Every Thursday night, the park also hosted a non-denominational free Bible study at 7:30 p.m. The grand opening received national publicity. Not all good. 800 customers turned up to experience the Holy Land experience. While the park was beautiful, with incredibly themed areas, like many of the newest Orlando parks, much of the news and publicity focused on the fact that Jewish activists claimed the place was designed to convert them to Christianity.
The entire thrust of this park, and it really isn't a park either, it's really a church experience, is to promote Jesus. And specifically, Zion's Hope, which is the parent of the Holy Land experience, is directed at converting Jews to Christianity in a deceptive manner.
Irv Rubin, chair of the Jewish Defense League, compared the park to the Holocaust. He told a newspaper that there are 2 ways that you could murder us. Physically, like Auschwitz, and spiritually, the way of Marvin Rosenthal and the Holy Land experience. Irv Rubin was jailed shortly after and was charged with conspiracy to bomb a mosque in California and a government office. Protesters to the site were expected on opening day, and security was enhanced to combat any trouble that could arise. Only a small handful turned up, including Irv Rubin. Rosenthal continued to state he wanted to use the interactive live museum as a way to reach out to people of all faiths and nationalities, though the attraction really only showed his idea of faith. He continued to state, "We are not entertainment, we are not a museum. This is designed to communicate the truth of the Word of God. We do that very publicly, and we do that without apology." Oftentimes, the marketing and owners called it a museum, sometimes a ministry, but rarely ever wanted to call themselves a theme park.
Yeah, maybe it's for like tax purposes or something.
Gave us exposure that we probably could not have afforded through advertising again in 10 years. We got in probably a week and a half.
Those visiting were not bombarded with leaflets about the church and were mostly left up to their own devices while inside, though encouraged to take part in prayer and the attraction's offerings. The park's hiring policy was called unfair and was also protested. The attraction required employees to sign a statement of beliefs and what church they attended, with some feeling like their faith excluded them from being hired when applying. In response to this, the park said that the purpose was not to figure out where they go to church, but to determine if they had a relationship with God and would fit in with the park. Holy Land's 140 employees would pray together in meetings, and the company wanted continuity of the staff at the attraction. They felt it was well within their rights to hire people who had similar religious beliefs. While some leaders of the Orlando Jewish community gave the word to avoid the park, most chose to just ignore it when it opened. Some pastors who attended opening day said they hadn't seen anything that trivializes religion, though the commercialization of it was under constant scrutiny by some. Many hoped it would be a place where Christians and the Jewish could go to better understand each other. Overall, the park's reception was mixed, but mostly positive by those who visited. The Live-In Biblical Museum offered exhibits, pageants, and pop gospel songs rather than rides. There was no water into wine bars or Bible dark rides, even if some continued to visit expecting some form of attraction. The park's marketing was surprisingly quite honest about what it was, rather than trying to trick people visiting Orlando into going there. They called it an example of something overtly Christian that is done at a highly professional level and done honestly and openly. They created performances that were called encouragements of faith, taking the replica sites and using contemporary and sometimes classic songs to try and make people think about what happened there. Rosenthal stated that the realization of his 10-year-old dream had created a wholesome, family-oriented, educational and entertainment facility where people could come to be encouraged, instructed, and reinforced in their faith. A total immersion experience that offered historical proof of the Bible and dynamically demonstrated that the Bible is God's word to man. The Holy Land experience was open daily throughout the year except for Thanksgiving and Christmas Day. For those who wanted to come back often, you could pick up the Jerusalem Gold Annual Pass for $69.99.
Right, the annual pass. What the hell? What is this? This is not an ad. No, this is part of the video.
Bring the Bible to life for your family by visiting the Holy Land Experience in Orlando, Florida.
After opening, the publicity that the site was built to convert began to fade out, and while reminders of the issue were brought up each time something new was added, a new focus took the media's attention: the site's taxes. Rosenthal estimated annual operating costs of more than $3 million and said he thought he needed 180 to 200,000 people paying $17 entrance to make enough to cover costs. A year after opening, Holy Land expanded and quickly added a $9 million scriptorium center for biblical antiques, a 60-minute tour that opened in February 2002. This new exhibit was more museum-like, with a rotating collection of thousands of religious artifacts. The 17,000 square foot museum collection was owned by Protestant businessman Robert D. Van Kampen and his family. They donated the new edition as a way to get more people to see their collection. The family had also been big donors during the creation of the park.
Of course.
By 2003, the park owed $195,000 in property taxes.
Ooh.
They continue to argue that since the park spread the church group's religious message, they deserve tax-free status, postponing its payments until the matter was settled. Lawyers for Holy Land sued the county to block tax collection and continue to fight the tax payments. The park's owner aimed to take the case to the Supreme Court if necessary. He was confident that the Holy Land would win, as they were already tax exempt at federal and state levels, only having a problem with the county. County officials contended that the ministry's argument that Holy Land Experience deserves the same tax treatment as a museum or other non-profits that charged admission, such as the Orlando Science Center, was invalid. Church groups and other non-profits may own revenue-producing property or sideline businesses, and those could be taxed according to the property appraiser, calling the site an entertainment venue. In the 2001 tax year, Zion's Hope listed $5.9 million in total revenue on the taxes, $4.26 million of which was from the Holy Land Experience. A circuit court judge ruled in favor of the Christian theme park, seeking non-profit exemptions from property taxes. The outcome ruled in 2005 that all of the park was off limits to taxation, not just the on-site administrative and educational facilities. The park's mountain tax bill was dropped, and it was ruled that Orange County violated Zion's Hope's due process by failing to explain why it denied the exemptions. Holy Land Experience had so far only paid limited taxes since opening, and was also exempt from sales tax. However, if they had paid through February 2004, the bill would be $786,000. They were now estimated to avoid around a $200,000 a year property tax bill by this win. More than 305,000 people visited the attraction during its 2001 opening year, crushing the projected amount expected. While most places in the tourism industry struggled greatly after the 9/11 attacks, Holy Land Experience was an exception and saw an increase in visitors, with many stating the attacks made them think more about their faith. In its first 4 years of operation, the Holy Land Experience welcomed more than 1.1 million guests through its gates. Even with this, the park could not break even with its operating costs. It was costing much more than expected to operate the park. After the successful start, attendance began to decline, and the Holy Land Experience started to struggle. The operating costs were just greatly exceeding the income generated, and had to be subsidized by Zion's Hope with income from donations. Despite its tax breaks, the Holy Land Experience was over $2 million in debt. It was decided the man whose dream it was to build an interactive Holy Land and spared no expense was out. In 2005, Zion's Hope and the Holy Land Experience were separated into two distinct independent organizations. Holy Land directors ousted Marvin Rosenthal from his leadership with Holy Land, and a board of directors would take charge of its daily operations. They immediately began to trim down the expensive offerings and implemented a new marketing plan. The park's tax status would later be confirmed further in 2006. The county continued to protest the park's status until Governor Jeb Bush signed a law that allowed an exemption for theme parks that displayed biblical manuscripts and waived admission fees at least 1 day a year. Thereafter, the Holy Land Experience would open 1 day a year for free. The Washington Post reported that Holy Land Experience paid lobbyists between $10,000 and $30,000 to push the legislation through quicker. With tighter expenses and a larger marketing plan, the park still failed to get a handle on its debt. The new board of directors included people who had more experience with tourist attractions rather than the ministry side of things, but nothing helped. While no longer affiliated with the park, Marvin Rosenthal said he still wanted it to be a success, but he never wanted to see it turn into a profit-based tourist attraction. He always wanted it to remain as a place to teach the Bible.
And you can go to some of the theme parks and get fantasy. We'd like to think that when people come to the Holy Land Experience, they're going to get eternal truth.
That's rather
The new goal was to
idealistic.
transform the Holy Land
Hopeful.
experience from a small, relatively obscure Orlando attraction into a recognizable and well-defined brand. Turning
How have I
around its
never heard of
downward
this
spiral,
before?
and to
Again.
do that, its key would be its marketing. New president Dennis Gilbert said that they had a good start in place, but they had the most awesome brand possible: Jesus Christ. The new target audience would be the many, many Christian groups who visited Orlando's attractions. While the new board said they would take the Holy Land in a new direction, they were unsure if they would ever add rides. They said, never say never. To start though, they would look to create marketing partnerships and alliances with outside interests and make themselves more visible. Nothing planned worked, and to try and help with the mounting debt, the board reached out to various Christian broadcasting networks to create some kind of deal to help keep the Holy Land experience running. The company which expressed interest was TBN, the Trinity Broadcasting Network.
Oh, hallelujah. Do me one more favor. Come on, throw a great big Southern California love wave to the whole wide world. Oh, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
The Californian-based empire with 12,500 worldwide TV and cable affiliates took over Holy Land
What
and
is
its
with that
estimated
hair?
$8 million debt. Rather than a purchase, the deal was described as a marriage, since both companies were non-profit, with little money actually changing hands, but in a deal said to be worth $37 million.
You know what? Right now is a beautiful time to come to Orlando. You know, today, it probably didn't get higher than what, 85?
Maybe at the most.
It was just beautiful
Lower
today.
humidity is great.
Beautiful breeze, and the crowds are down because this is September and October. Kids are back in school, and now's the greatest time for you to call your pastor and say, Pastor, we want our groups to come and get a bus and get a tour and come to Holy Land. You will love it. You will love it.
Trinity Broadcasting, the largest Christian broadcasting network in the world, was
It's
founded
like
in
Dolly
1973 by Paul and Jan
guess.
Crouch, and was
There's a
built
lot
by
of
selling
volume,
airtime
to
to
be
ministries
sure.
and soliciting donations via telephons from its viewers. Quickly, Jan Crouch took the helm at the Holy Land experience, with hopes to turn it into a faith-based Universal Studios, where in addition to the park, they could create a TV studio filming Christian films using the sets as backlots. Trinity was already planning to open a TV production facility in Orlando, and the timing just worked. After taking over, Jan Crouch regularly filmed segments showing behind the scenes of the Holy Land experience, quickly becoming the face of the attraction. The attraction now had 2 stars in the spotlight, Jan and Jesus.
Les, do you ever feel like you're typecast at all, maybe, with because that doesn't come off, does it?
My kids say I have a messiah complex.
But the hair and beard are real.
Yeah, kind of everywhere you go.
Yeah.
You know,
A
and
lady today said, you look like Jesus.
we're shopping for some fabrics, even in the Chinatown or wherever we were. It's unbelievable. Yeah. So it kind of really, you have to really watch the things you do and things you say.
Amen.
Which is what we should be doing anyway.
Right.
Since 2001, the main Jesus actor in the park had been played by Les Chevaldeoff. While others would also play the role over the years, he would become the most recognizable. Les would remain in the role after Trinity's takeover of the park and would, along with playing Jesus, become an executive assistant to Jan Crouch, a show and film writer for the park shows, along with being an actor/musician. The Canadian actor called it the role of a lifetime, a humbling experience, and one you couldn't fake. The former airplane mechanic also reportedly was a carpenter in his spare time. The role of Jesus within the park was originally temporary when it opened in 2001, but the Rosenthals were so impressed with the performance they kept the actor on.
I was in the video store just going through, just like all of us do, on Blockbuster or whatever it was. I forget what store it was. And I'm going through, and the guy says, "Hey, what movie is Jesus watching tonight?" I was like, "Well, another kids show. Here it is here. Where's your kids section?"
What would Jesus rent?
Yeah.
Watch Jesus.
Yeah.
That's funny.
New additions came to the park fast, with new food options, playgrounds, prayer gardens, and a scaled-down Temple of Jerusalem. The feel and tone of the park also changed with Trinity's takeover of operations. Actors in the shows would now regularly enter the crowd and perform faith-healing miracles on other casts, similar to what you might see on the shows from TBN. Guests were sometimes hopeful they will be able to receive faith healing from Jesus themselves, but they only received words of comfort before the actor playing Jesus made a swift exit.
I was watching a little guy in the back in a wheelchair, in the back, and I stand in the back when we do Passion indoors, and
She sings.
and Les.
She sings great.
No, I don't.
Yes, she does.
No, and Les was walking as Jesus, the Jesus in all his glory and glorified body, walking down the aisle. And when he got up to the top, I could see the little man couldn't see. And of course, he's in a wheelchair. And all of a sudden, I saw him stand up right there just to get to see. And he kind of looked down and walked over in the middle. And he realized, I'm standing. And he was watching Jesus. You know, the song that plays is We'll See Him Face to Face. And we all will. Everyone will see him face to face.
The illusion of his role as Jesus was kept throughout the park, and he was not permitted to be seen without his costume and makeup, with a team on hand to switch the actor into the more beaten and broken version of the character during the shows. His appearances were strategically planned, with a quick exit so he wouldn't be stopped for photo ops after the shows. Those visiting the park were not asked directly for donations to TBN, outside of the ticket price, but the option was always there to donate if they wished. The Holy Land experience continued to blur the line between a museum, entertainment, and real church practices. Guests could now book tickets to attend the Last Communion Supper with Jesus, played by the ordained minister/actor. At certain times, those visiting could also be baptized in the custom-built Baptism of Jesus fountain by the park star. The free-of-charge experience had visitors change into robes and be immersed in the water by Jesus before being told they had received the gift of the Holy Spirit. The reenactment of the Sermon on the Mount had the Jesus actor give a speech before his disciples handed each visitor a handful of goldfish crackers. Rather than be open daily now, the Holy Land experience will be closed on Sundays to hold a non-denominational worship service in the Theatre of Life, hosted by Acts Fellowship Church. The blur of real and tourism even had visitors invited to write prayer requests on paper and insert them into the cracks of the replica Western Wall. The prayers were then collected every week and sent to Jerusalem, where volunteers would insert them into the authentic Western Wall. Between 60 and 100,000 of these were sent each year.
And then I want to tell you just little things like one day for one reason, one of our Jesus people, and we need a lot of Jesus people. We have Holy Communion going on. We have them work with the children. We have them die on the cross. We have them all the 4 women that love Jesus, and so we need them all. And one day for one reason, one of our Jesus characters quit, and I went, you know, and then it wasn't an hour later, in the door walked Robert, I'll just say, and he looked like Jesus, and he said, oh, I played Jesus over in Lakeland First Assembly. I went, you need a job? He went, uh-huh. And I mean, we've seen that over and over, and over.
Different departments.
Yeah.
God provides and moves. Yeah, just to provide, making the team right.
After the new owners took over, ticket sales increased by 25% due to the mention of the experience on the TV stations of Trinity. The park's rebirth was looking successful and even inspired other similar attractions to be considered around the United States.
Surprise,
One such
surprise.
park in Rutherford, Tennessee, hoped to take the concept further with a proposed $127 million Bible Park USA, looking to attract 1.5 million visitors a year. It never happened.
Maybe you have a story, and I want to, something that just was pressing on my heart, that we get excited about all that's going on here. And maybe you're watching right now going, why can't I have something like that? Why can't I be a part of something like that? And you can. If God has given you a gift set, whether it be acting or administration or something, who knows? Maybe you just want to be part of this team. There's a drawing of your heart. Call us. There's numbers on the screen. You give us a call. We're doing auditions all the time.
And those of you that would like to be a part of this, maybe you live in Orlando already and you just thought, you know, I never thought about it. But we are always looking for production people.
Yep.
We're always looking for just everybody that loves to be a part of a beautiful work like this. And you know, I just have to always stop to thank TBN.
The Holy Land experience remained around the same over the next few years. The park attendance per year remained steady at around 200 to 225,000 visitors a year. The busiest day the park had ever seen, though, was yet to come. That day would be the required free ticket day that saw more than 7,000 people try to visit it in one day.
A crush of visitors to the Holy Land experience near the Mall at Millennia caused officers to shut down a busy exit ramp. Good afternoon. I'm Jim Payne.
And I'm Martha Sagowski. Our big story of 4 traffic tie-ups and apologies after a Central Florida theme park gets an abundance of park goers.
Thousands of people showed up at the Holy Land experience. The park's capacity is 1,500 people, but admission was free today, and thousands more tried to get in.
Over 2,800 people would
surprise.
enter the park on the day, and 5,000 people were given free tickets to return as the park was full. The surge in visitors on the free day in 2009 came from newspapers reporting on it for the first time. From when the deal was made in 2006, there was no advertisement for this free day in advance. And while they had offered it, the previous years had only seen around 900 people turn up. The free day of the year would continue to remain one of the park's most popular. But nothing was seen quite like that busy day in 2009 when I-4 nearby was backed up for miles.
Oh, God bless you. Everyone that wanted to come to Holy Land Experience today will have the opportunity to come to Holy Land Experience for free, either today or in the future. We're handing out vouchers that are good for the next 30 days. And with the voucher, you can come back to the park within the next 30 days.
In 2012, the park added its largest addition since Trinity took over, the 2,000-seat Church of All Nations, a state-of-the-art
2,000-seat?
facility to host the main shows for the park throughout the day in a climate-controlled building. It would also now be used for the park's Sunday worship sessions, hosted by Live Church Orlando. Before and during the construction of the large facility, the park took donations in increments of 195 cents. This was to represent the 195 countries in the world. The max able to be donated was $100,000 per country to cover the expected cost of the entire church at $19.5 million.
And then 100,000 per country, 19 million. And we all feel somebody's going to do that. Everybody here feels. And you know what? It's you.
It could be.
You thought it was somebody else, but you know what? It's you. You're the one. You've had that inheritance. You didn't know what you were going to do with it. You're older. You don't know. You know, your kids got all they can use. And the Lord wants to use that here forever and ever and ever. What a love gift.
Are they trying to guilt trip
to the
people
Father.
into
What a love
donating?
gift to him. And here's what it'll look like.
Public relation nightmares continued to plague the TBN owners during their ownership of the park. From tax evasion at their mansions in Windermere to the using of company funds to fund their personal lifestyles and family feuds, TBN's behind the scenes continued to create an onslaught of negative press for the company, which didn't help the reputation of the park. In 2013, TBN planned to expand the park and purchase the land a 7-Eleven sat on across the street for $3.8 million.
closed 2020?
Located
God
next to
damn,
the
they
overflow
lasted
parking
that
lot,
long?
now owning 11 acres of land there, it will be the planned site for the company's 100,000 square foot television studio. The TV studio plan would never happen, and the 7-Eleven still sits across the street today. Holy Land was one of the only places to ever exist that looked like a theme park, smelled like a theme park, but refused to call itself a theme park. This constantly offered a tough identity issue that would be hard to get past. A place full of actors, novelties, and shows, even turkey legs, that called itself a ministry. From the day it opened, the Holy Land experience, with its large cast of actors and multiple live performances a day, had operations that just cost too much to run to ever turn a profit, and donations to the park started to dry up quickly.
It's amazing. So come on and be a part. Be a part of TBN. be a part of Holy Land. It's such a miracle. And you can give.
Surprised they lasted.
You can love. But the main thing
Same
you
here.
can do is you can pray for us. I love you and Jesus loves you. And we'll see you next time, okay? Bye-bye.
After a few years of injecting millions and millions of dollars into the park,
I
in
think this is the
2012,
power of
Trinity stopped
Jesus
raising
and the
money
USA
with
at work
telethons
here.
as many came out against the fundraising practice, and spending for the company had to change. TBN would drastically cut investment money used towards the park into a fraction of what they had previously been funding. Some areas of the park were reworked, but it would mostly remain the same for the next few years, with the exception of the Trinity Mini Golf, a photo op of a cutout of Jesus walking on water, and little else. While they continued to add new spectacular shows to try and bring people back, nothing would work. As ticket prices continued to rise, attendance continued to drop year by year. Jan Crouch operated the park until she passed away in early 2016. It had been Jan who saw the park as her baby, injecting money into the experience and working to try and see it become a success. After she passed away, many employees knew that their future would be uncertain. Her signature pink and blonde wigs have been a staple around the park, and change would come quickly. Les Cheveldayoff left his role at the park and worked on his own ministry.
Those were wigs?
The Holy Land Experience in Orlando, Florida is an incredible place where you can go back in time and not just see, but experience life in biblical times.
With new TBN management, an auction was held selling off many items from within the park to try and create some money to help with its $1.3 million deficit. Holy Land Experience would insist it was not going away, it was just trying to sell a few things. The point of no return though for the Holy Land Experience had been crossed, and by the start of 2020, attendance was down around 50% over the previous years. With ticket prices now at $50, in February of 2020, with the park losing money daily, it was announced that 118 employees would be laid off, a majority of the park's staff, though they would still insist that the park would remain open. Now though, all theatrical productions, restaurants and shops would be closed. For nearly 20 years, the Holy Land Experience was set up as a living museum experience. That focus was on live entertainment. Now they would aim to have a new focus and return it to being just a church and educational museum attraction. The Church of All Nations would continue, along with the scriptorium. And the park's very first attraction, that huge model of Jerusalem, would also be one of the key things that would remain. Pretty much the whole rest of the park would just sit there closed. TBN would now look to reevaluate the best and most efficient use of the property, assessing other economic opportunities, including the redevelopment of the land. The sale of the property completely would be one of the options that would be considered. The land under the park was in great demand due to its location, and many people were linked to the site as an interested buyer, even the owners of the nearby Icon Park entertainment area. The hope that the park would remain didn't last long. When the COVID pandemic hit the world, like many other attractions, the Holy Land Experience would be closed, just a month after it had been announced live shows would end. Many knew that the park's fate was now sealed. Surprisingly, it would rise for one final time, most likely due to tax reasons. Guests could enter the park, visit the scriptorium, and see the large model of Jerusalem. Over a year after it closed due to COVID-19, on April 28th and 29th, 2021, the Holy Land Experience would open its gates for one final time, offering 2 days of free admission. Capacity was limited and face masks were required. After the 2-day opening, the gates would close and the Holy Land Experience would be no more, never opening again. While the site remained closed and mostly abandoned, the landscaping and maintenance of the park were kept in great condition. In August 2021, the park's future was confirmed. Advent Health had purchased the land that Holy Land sat on for $32 million. They plan to develop the site into new medical facilities. The proposal is to bring enhanced healthcare services to the Millenia area. Before the fall
That's
of
nice.
2022, Advent Health planned to remove and deconstruct the Christian-themed attraction following final approval from the city. The park currently sits untouched in great condition as of May 2022, over a year after it closed its doors forever, waiting to be turned into something new. The Van Kampen collection that called home the Scriptorium was removed from the site and is back in the care of the Van Kampen Foundation. Everything else currently sits maintained, yet unused, until the day it's demolished forever. The Holy Land Experience was built by one of the great theme park design companies, but it was ultimately a huge failure. While the park was beautiful and incredibly themed, with some of the highest tech and elaborate live performances in any themed attraction, it will soon be torn down forever to make way for a different kind of healing.
When Advent Health announced that it had purchased the now shuttered Holy Land site, they said it was to serve the community, adding that Orlando still continues to be one of the fastest growing regions, and they need to provide access to healthcare that's close to home for the folks who live here.
Called the world's first living biblical museum,
I thought that was the end
Holy
for a
Land
second.
Experience had many skeptics, but ultimately was a place that connected with the audience it intended. It would be easy to make a video poking fun at the Holy Land Experience, Orlando's odd, religious-based sort of theme park that would not call itself a theme park. But after researching and reading stories from the many people who did enjoy it, it would be unfair. Whatever you may think of the Holy Land Experience, if it trivialized and commercialized religion, was insensitive, or just strange, throughout its many controversies, there are many
Like
people
taxes?
who felt a real connection with the place. For 20 years, it gave them a place where they could feel closer to their beliefs, in a unique attraction that had never been seen on that scale before and likely never will again. A place that for those who wanted it to, the Bible came alive before them.
Okay, now is it the end or? One of the largest religious television networks, not purchased any more theme parks. I think now that's the end of the video. Yep, there it is.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of X.
Remember to like and subscribe, everyone. Still though, that's one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard of. Like a Jesus Bible themed theme park. Also, there was that one bit where they said like, oh, only Christians can apply. I'm like, is that illegal? Like, can you specify only Christians can be hired at this theme park that's not a theme park? As they claim. Also, there's that whole thing about, like, taxes and stuff. Like, they got away with, like, dodging, like, hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes every year. Because of religious exemption. Oh, hey, there's one person was there. Someone went there. I went here on a youth trip. It was honestly super boring. And when Jesus rode out on a motorcycle, fully decked out in a sequin tunic, our youth pastor told us he wished he hadn't taken us there. Kinda impressed they could build a theme park simultaneously offensive to Jews, Christians, historians, and theater kids. Oh, as someone who drove by the Holy Land Experience frequently, my biggest question was why there was a gorilla on the roof of one of the buildings. The Trinity miniature golf course. Driving by this on the way to Disney, my dad would always say, hey, oh, let's go to Holy Land, just for us to scream as we drove by. when we were on vacation at Disney as a kid, I remember my mom telling us, "You'd better have fun or we'll take you to Holy Land." We were and still are Christians. I can assure you that that was a terrifying threat. I'm not sure anyone took this place seriously. Went there as a kid. Jan Crouch's hair could be a theme park all by itself. Anime Jesus would have saved that theme park? I don't know, man. I don't know if any Jesus could have saved that theme park. You know who I really feel... You know who I really feel for? The kids were all excited because their parents were taking them to Orlando for vacation, thinking they were going to Disney or Universal, and then they pulled up here. Oh man, that would have been awful. Oh man. A religious theme park, quote unquote, that didn't want to be called a theme park. The abandoned and dangerous water park in the desert. Alright.
Located halfway between Las Vegas and LA, in the middle of the desert next to the highway, sits an abandoned water park. Lake Dolores has been the home to multiple recreation offerings over the years. From a short-lived modern thrill park that was closed due to an accident, to what could be considered the United States' first water park. A water park that was full of danger, limited rules, and accidents, that some even called the Action Park of the West.
Now, I'm no daredevil, but back at the state...
Oh, the Action Park of the West, they called this place? Oh no, did anyone die here? Because they did at Action Park. Oh no.
They told me this is the kind of story that demands reporter involvement, getting your feet wet, so to speak. So here goes on the water slide, the stand-up style.
Lake Dolores Resort. Rock. Oh, I didn't get.
John Roberts, known as Bob, and his wife Dolores Byers left their home and paint contracting business in Lakewood, California, and moved to 320 acres of land outside of Barstow in 1953. The family would turn the large section of the desert into a farm that would raise cattle, with the main focus being farming alfalfa. Neither venture produced much profit, the majority of which had to be used to maintain the farm and equipment. The family would have to take second jobs to try and pay their bills on time, with roles ranging from well drillers to hay balers. In 1963, the US government allowed the importing of cheap beef from Argentina and Australia. Cattle prices fell, and so did the farm's already minimal profit. After a decade of barely making ends meet, the couple decided they would use the land to try something else, and hopefully, finally, start earning some money.
By 1956, there were more than 65 million cars on our roads, with 90 million forecast by 1975. Clearly, it was a time for national action.
Shortly after purchasing the property, their land was diminished by around 50 acres, when Interstate 15 would cut across the front of the buyer's land. This new highway offered a major route connecting San Diego, Los Angeles, and Las Vegas. Oh, and also Primm, Nevada. Since we're close to Vegas, Lance has to be here.
I was stupid. I was really stupid.
Located nearly exactly halfway between LA and Vegas, in Newberry Springs, California, the family would look to take a new avenue to take advantage of the large number of people heading right by their doorstep. They would turn the farm into a stopping point for recreation. In 1966, the couple gave up farming after they had read that recreation areas would be in demand in the coming years as city dwellers would be taken to the deserts and mountains. They came up with a plan for a complete recreation facility that they presented to local bankers. The idea was approved, but due to tight budgets, they were unable to obtain the necessary loans to complete the project in one go. They would start the project, and piece by piece, they would continue building until it became that full recreation destination between LA and Vegas. The first stage was to create a lake. Located on a natural spring, it would become a ski lake and named after Bob's wife. Lake Dolores would open to the public in 1967. The skiing wasn't overly popular, and it never really caught on. The first years, it was mainly used by the family. The buyers stated it was harder than they expected to create this first offering, and the large amount of water required was expensive for what they were getting in return. Unfazed, however, the buyers continued with the project, increasing the amount of lakes to 4, one for fishing, one for mini boating, and one for swimming. To create these lakes, water would be pumped from the wells once used to irrigate their alfalfa fields. The water from the bottom would then be pumped into the fish lake and finally into the fingerling lake in a constant circulation. This system created lake water that a county bacteria test proved was pure enough to drink straight from the lake, even though it didn't look like it.
Lake Dolores, the magical water world that features the most exciting high-speed water slides. The family fun place that offers relaxation and incredible thrills just off the I-15 Las Vegas freeway near Barstow. Call now for special rates. Glide down the 200-foot water slides, up to 50 miles an hour. Good, clean, safe fun. A thrill a second. Bring the kids, picnic, camp overnight. Fly the giant swings at Lake Dolores. The magical water world that guarantees a fun-filled time.
Man-made lakes alone, however, wouldn't be the thing to draw people to the recreation center. Lake Dolores wouldn't be just another average swimming hole. The buyer's imagination would take this one step further. High above the swimming lake would be 2 giant slides beckoning visitors driving past. These weren't just average slides either. They would create an 80-foot high sandy hill that was made from dirt excavated to make the lake.
How
there
do
were
you
no
stand
stairs here.
while doing that?
You would be climbing up in the mud, and at the top were the 2 unique 220-foot long stand-up water slides, each with a 15-foot drop into the lake at the end. Danger would become known to come hand in hand with Lake Dolores. Rather than sit on a mat or sit on the slide at all, the idea would be to reach the bottom and drop into the lake while trying to remain standing. Try being the key word. Not only could you fall off to the side into the hard sand, but if you were unlucky, you could fall and hit your head directly onto the hard steel slide, especially towards the bottom of the drop.
Well, they say when the horse throws you the first time, you got to get right back on him. So let's take it again.
Is the slide
Tom.
metal? It looks like it.
Close, but still no cigar. Sure wish there was a lift to the top.
In the early years, the park knew it was dangerous, and risk was involved in attractions.
Now for the main attractions, but first a warning. You proceed at your own risk.
We don't make any beans about the fact that there is some risk here. There's risk in anything you do. Even when you drive down the freeway, you have a risk involved. So anything that you do nowadays, when you go snow skiing, water skiing, and if you come here, any place where there's some fun, there is some element of risk.
Had any serious accidents or problems for you?
No, nothing real serious, no.
Other early attractions included a swinging trapeze located in the middle of a 15-foot deep lake. There was fishing and a picnic area. For the first years, the attraction only had portable toilets until permanent fixtures were constructed in the early 70s. They only did this to accompany the next major addition, a campground. This large project began construction in 1972, and you could pitch your tent directly at the lake's edge, if you got there early enough to get the spot.
Just got to make sure everybody gets out of the way, you know, so when they come down these stand-up slides that another guy doesn't land on somebody else. You just keep control. That's the main thing. We have people on top that, you know, control them from coming down. Some of them take off too quick, and so we, you know, keep everybody out of the way.
The park became well known for teenage parties, drinking, hookups, and offering exciting but unsafe fun. The water park would be a huge daily undertaking and managed by various family members, with Dolores watching the front gate along with daughter Kim.
Dennis Bender is Byers' son-in-law, a history and government teacher at Apple Valley High. That's his son Donnie turning 360s on the stand-up slide. And daughter Debbie riding the laydown.
Families would come from all over to visit Lake Dolores. It was unique. They would spot the signs at the turn of the freeway and would see the slides in the distance at the odd oasis in the middle of nowhere. By 1971, 30,000 visitors were visiting in a year, with 94% of the lake's attendance coming from LA. Originally, they would pay 50 cents for adults. This increased to $1.50 quite quickly due to the demand and the need for higher returns. It was instantly more successful than the Byers' farming business and offered much better profit than they could have ever hoped for from farming. They would continue to try and push the lake attendance by spending nearly $20,000 a month on advertising.
Jeez.
The original plans for the recreation centre changed over the years, and more was added to the attraction. With the addition of more activities, it morphed into Lake Dolores Water Park, which some consider to be the first real water park in the United States. Known as the fun spot of the desert, more additions came with a zip line taking riders on a high-speed trip into the lake, hanging from a handheld device. If you couldn't hold on for the 200-foot drop, you promptly fell onto the hard sand below. And if you could, you would eventually fall 20 feet into the lake at the bottom.
Now, I'm sure that the third time would have been the charm, but I've only got a few trips up this hill left in me. So I think I'm going to try the tram. All right.
Get out for the tire. 3.
If I'd really known what kind of timing was involved, I wouldn't have been so eager to try my luck. And lucky is what I was.
There were also 8 180-foot-long laydown slides on mats that would reach speeds of 40 miles per hour on the 60-degree angle steel drop.
40 miles an
hour. On to the
hour.
beginner slope, which I obviously should have tried first.
And we're proud to
Oh,
announce
come on.
unlimited talk, text, and data starting at just...
Nope. Alright, just a few more seconds. Just give it a second. Okay, there we go.
To mess up on this one, as long as you go lying down. Otherwise, it's a little tricky keeping your seat. It doesn't take long to get the hang of it, and those who have hang together.
If you were good, you could skim across the lake at the bottom. If you were really good, you could land in the dirt on the other side, often crashing into other guests, tents, and cars. Visitors could also find diving boards, bumper boats, and raft rides over the years, along with being a home for multiple sports from the area and boat races. It was a huge teenage hangout, and they came for one thing.
Well, I think it's just like any high school, you know, there's a great peer image and the social factor, and the girls come here to meet the boys, and the boys come here to meet the girls, and believe me, they meet. And they really do. And this place is a mecca in the middle of the desert.
They meet. They
for
really
young
do.
people, young boys, and young girls to meet.
Yeah, you get tired of the beaches. You want to change every now and then. You know.
So it's worth their drive, what, 150 miles?
Oh yeah.
That's 2 hours and you're here.
Yeah. Nothing's like this around in where we live.
The number of lakes at the site increased to 7. Lake Dolores would remain successful throughout the 1970s. Well, if you don't account for the odd drowning, of course. The park certainly didn't count those, and finding a body at the bottom of the lake was not the rare occurrence it should have been. The first time the park had any attendance issues were following the gas crisis in 1979. After a hard hit to a...
Okay, so someone did die here, so it is like Action Park.
attendance, the popular spot quickly bounced back. and attendance was nearly back to the high levels of the earlier years. The early 80s continued to be a success, but they wouldn't reach the peaks of earlier years' attendance. In the fall of 1985, Bob Byers would close the lake. Very little had changed over the last 10 years, and the couple wanted to retire and sell the lake. Concerns were raised about the increasing standards for safety at water parks, and Lake Dolores clearly would not be able to comply for long. Competition was also increasing, with Wet n Wild Vegas open on the Strip. You didn't have to drive into the middle of nowhere to get your water park's fix. It seemed like it would be the perfect time for the Byers to hang up their boots. The 268-acre site would be acquired by Newberry Springs developer A.J. Gus Raygosa. On the lake would be a proposed 2,000-space RV resort called Waterworld, a place that would be planned as one of the US's largest privately operated RV resorts. This new destination would add Wild West, Polynesian and Asian-themed villages, along with a golf course between the now multiple existing lakes of Lake Dolores. The new project was planned to cost $20 million and take 5 to 10 years to complete. Investors for the project never materialized, and nothing came from it. The planned project fell through, and Bob Byers cancelled the deal when they didn't come up with a $250,000 down payment for the site. He even lowered the down payment to $175,000. They still didn't comply. When asked about the project, Gus said that they had been working hard on Waterworld for nearly 2 years, and they had spent a lot of money but couldn't come up with investors with ready cash. The total sale of Lake Dolores was expected to have been $1.5 million. The water park reopened, as it originally was, continuing to be managed for the Byer family. However, Bob stated it was still up for sale. He wanted to retire. Gus Raygosa said he wasn't giving up, and it was just a misunderstanding. He had just been trying to find the cash to get the project rolling. Still. In 1989, Gus again announced he would be buying the lake and would create Waterworld. This time as before, but now with an added jungle boat ride. The Byers closed Lake Dolores Recreation Center in 1989 and would sell the lake in August 1990 to be able to finally retire. Lake Dolores' story does not end here though. It was all about to go downhill. Gus never did get the funds to create Waterworld. For nearly a decade the resort sat there, and a long way from the recreation water capital of the desert it had been. In 1996 the lake was sold again to an investment group led by Californian businessman Terry Christensen.
Lake Dolores Resort, Rockahula Water Park.
He was a general contractor who had already built 4 water parks for other people. He wanted to build one for himself, and he formed the Lake Dolores Group. Instead of reopening and upgrading what had been there before, he would create something brand new. Something that was a little less dangerous. The complete opposite of what had stood before. A brand new, shiny and crystal clear chlorine-watered attraction. The dangerous Lake Dolores Water Park of old would be no more. It would now be called the Rockahula Water Park. Located on the former lakes, the majority of which were removed, the brand new 270-acre water park would feature a 1950s and 1960s rock and roll theme, along with a brand new larger lake. All new slides were brought in and the area redeveloped completely. Opening on July 4th, 1998, Rockahula featured 18 water slides with names such as Grease Lightning, the Triple Twist and Shout, the Doo-Wop Super Drop, and the Big Bopper, which the park advertised as the world's largest family raft ride. These new fiberglass slides that replaced the still versions were painted red, white and blue in reference to the flag. Throughout the park, rock music from the theme era was played and theme-in was scattered throughout to set the tone. After the park opened, an RV park and campground were also planned. The park's vice president of marketing, Rick Miller, when asked about the new park, said that the place began as a roadside attraction, but now it was going to become a destination in its own right.
I'm a rusty old boat hitch, and I am barely...
Why?
Route 66 decor, and on an average day, over 1,000 people were visiting the brand new water park. They had big plans for the future.
Future plans for the resort include a hotel, a 36-hole golf course, an
Golf
amphitheater,
course?
an eclectic food court, a wave pool, and development of Fun Island, complete with miniature golf, go-karts, and a concert stage.
Yep, none of this would ever happen.
Surprise.
Issues began right away after opening. One of the investors was acting up and is said to have walked away from the deal with millions of dollars. Directly after, Lake Dolores LLC had to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy within its first year of opening.
Within its first
They were closed
year?
just 3 years later. The park's investors had spent so much money creating a brand new resort that it would never get anywhere close to making a profit, or have the time to do so. While a much safer park than what existed before, ironically, an accident would also play a large part in Rockahula's history. On May 29, 1999, the park closed for the day after a jet ski competition. A 23-year-old pool tech was about to start his shift, and 15 minutes before he clocked in for the evening, he instructed another employee to turn on the slide Doo-Wop Super Drop, as it had been turned off 60 minutes earlier when the park closed. He had decided he wanted to ride the slide and climb the stairs to the top. After believing it had had enough time to fill the run-out lane at the bottom, he went down the slide. The run-out lane hadn't filled enough, and he did not slow down, hitting the concrete dam at the end of the runoff, leaving him paralyzed. The park's general manager saw the employee laying on the floor at the bottom of the slide, but thought it was a joke, as employees were not allowed to ride slides after hours, and he did not have permission to do so. The pool tech applied for workers' compensation benefits due to the incident, and signed that the injuries occurred while testing the water slide. The park managers, including Terry Christensen, disputed the claim, and the application was denied. A huge court case began on whether the injury occurred during the course and scope of employment, with him not yet being clocked in. The park policy was not clear. Rockahula would be sued, and a jury in the court eventually awarded the employee $4.4 million in 2004. The original claim that he was not acting within the scope of employment was overturned. While many blame this lawsuit for the park's short demise, the park was already in a difficult position before this even happened. Rockahula's fate had been sealed directly after opening. They were in $3 million of debt before this incident even occurred. After the large expense of the construction and marketing of the park, the partner issues, and the difficult financial situation, the legal battle would be the final nail in the park's coffin. The water park's owners went into bankruptcy again, and after just 3 seasons, the brand new water park would be completely abandoned. Terry Christensen had tried to turn the destination into a resort worth visiting, creating something brand new, exciting, and unique. But sadly, through no fault of his own, Rockahula would cease to be.
Refreshing oasis that is the all-new Lake Dolores Resort.
What happened to it
at
now?
Rockahula
Is it
Water
just
Park.
sitting there?
Visitors are treated to an atmosphere filled with
Just
classic
abandoned,
Americana
like
and
no one's
family
gonna
fun.
do anything about it?
Boasting 18 brand new aqua attractions, including the Big Bopper, the world's largest family raft ride, the all-new Rockahula Water Park offers something for everyone. Young and old alike can bask in the sun, get their kicks on one of the many exciting water slides, relax in the cool flow of the Blue Bayou River, or take time to enjoy one of the many shaded areas in the park. When it's time to eat, the park offers the Lazy River Cafe, or a lush family picnic area.
The majority of the park's assets were liquidated, and in 2001, the land reverted back to Dolores buyers when a buyer couldn't be found. A year later, she would find a buyer for the park. Dolores would pass away shortly after. With a new group of investors buying the lake, just like it had done before, the water park would come back to life. After a $400,000 renovation, the water park reopened in May 2002 on weekends only, under the unofficial name Discovery Water Park. Terry Christensen was still on board as a consultant. It would open intermittently until the summer of 2004, when it would once again be closed. This time, it would never come back from the dead. Sitting abandoned next to the highway, the water park became a place of myth and mystery. From 2008, the park and land passed through multiple owners, with many attempts to reopen it. Some trying to turn it into housing, or even a new RV park. The site was also used in multiple TV shows and productions since its closing. The slides were eventually sold and shipped to Canada's Cultus Lake in British Columbia. The Big Bopper was renamed to Colossal Canyon. Much of what else remained was sold off, bit by bit, over the years. Anything left was stolen. Today, all of the slides and attractions are gone. Some of the buildings still stand, and what is left sits abandoned in ruin and covered in graffiti. Little remains of Rockahula, and even less of the original recreation centre. Over the years, the majority of it has been destroyed or set on fire by those visiting, and it now just sits in the middle of nowhere as a remnant of the past.
Wow. The only time it was ever like
In the 1960s and 70s, very little existed offering that water park experience. Most people know River Country, that opened in 1976, or Wet n Wild Orlando, that opened in 1977, and consider them to be the first official water park in the United States. But by then, Lake Dolores had been offering water park fun for over a decade. What Lake Dolores offered was rarely found elsewhere, and would be worth going out of the way for. That was until water parks eventually became much more prominent around the country. So far, the story of this now legendary place is one of 3 parts. An abandoned, rotting place next to a highway in the middle of the desert, a shiny new themed water park destination, and perhaps the most special, a family-ran, dangerous water place that many enjoyed but would never exist still today. This is a story, however, that never seems to truly end. In 2020, the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors approved a plan that would allow the redevelopment of the long-abandoned park. Now owned by G&GF Enterprises since 2013, it is believed that this could once again be known as an oasis in the desert. This new plan includes refreshing the 41-acre former water park, restoring the 22-acre lake, and finally adding hotels and restaurants that were once planned many years ago. The project was due to begin construction in 2020 and open the first phase in 2021. As of 2021, no work has started, and the new owner states this is down to the global pandemic. Construction on the water park, however, is stated to begin in 2022, ready for a summer 2023 opening. When asked, owner Omgard said around 90% of the old infrastructure is salvageable. By 2025, he hoped Lake Dolores would once again become a resort destination. Will this park rise from the dead one more time? Only time will tell. But it seems the story of Lake Dolores has a chance to continue. A story that has been the home of a water park in some form for over 55 years. A story that started with one family.
I have people that come all the way from Frisco down here, and they come from San Diego, down the Imperial Valley, the mountains, every place. And it's not just a drop-in thing. People, when they come to Lake Dolores, it's destination Lake Dolores when they come here.
Byers runs his 300-acre spread along with 19 members of his family. Now 62, he started building the lakes and slides in 1967 after going under as an alfalfa and cattle rancher.
In the original park, everything was built by hand by the Byers. It was a mud hole that barely had any rules in the middle of the desert, a place of good times and dangerous fun, reportedly with at least one major accident a day. It was a place full of murky lakes, bruising water slides, and a view of the desert in every direction. Bob Byers passed away in 1996. He left a legacy of creating not only a place thousands made amazing memories at, but what could be considered America's first water park.
It's out in the middle of nowhere, and like an oasis in the Sahara, Lake Dolores draws parched travelers from miles around.
Lake Dolores in its original form was the definition of a family-run place that people loved. From the Byers' children, cousins, and grandchildren, nearly all of them worked at the park at one point. Many stories talk about how friendly and welcoming they were to those visiting their lakes. One former visitor called the place a death trap, but man, it was a blast. If you didn't go home with a bruise or a cut from your day at Lake Dolores, you didn't have any fun. It was a place that the beer flowed, and accidents were just a regular thing that can never exist still today. A place of its time, one that eventually was abandoned not once, not twice, but 3 times.
Lake Dolores.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of
Alright, hang on. Let me look it up real quick. Lake Dolores. Redevelopment proposals. Purchase 2013. Sought approval from San Bernardino County. Set for construction to begin 2020. Approval was given in 2020. Project fell through. Listed for sale in 2021. Okay, so yeah, they never did anything. They never did anything with the property. Alright, what about some of the newer stuff? Vegas's deadliest disaster, the troubled history of MGM Grand Hotel. The abandoned and fraudulent history of Wild West World theme park. Barbecue, bankruptcy, and the FBI. Okay, you've got my attention, sir.
Opening for just over 2 months before being abandoned, the story of
Did I hear that right? 2 months and then abandoned. Oh, going to head out. See you next time? Alright, alright. Thanks, Michael, for stopping by. Hope you had fun. I know I did. I'm also hydrating. One last hydrate for the road, eh? But yeah, did you hear that just now? 2 months and then shut down. Wow.
Wild West World and its creator is just as wild as the theme the park was based on. The cowboy entrepreneur who rode into town on his trusty steed, looking to stir up some fun, but left an outlaw, with a story filled with barbecue, bankruptcy, and the FBI, and one of the shortest operating theme parks anywhere in the world. Strap in as we're going straight to the Wild Wild West.
Wild West theme park. Bankruptcy. Fugitive Texan. Guilty on 7 of 9 counts.
In 1999, just outside of Wichita in Benton, Kansas, Thomas Etheridge and his wife Cheryl opened the Prairie Rose Music Show and Chuck Wagon Supper. They were struggling cattle ranchers, with Cheryl's family raising cattle on the land since the late 1880s, who decided to branch out their company, Restoration Farms, and serve a little barbecue and sing cowboy music to try and increase their finances. The idea began small, hoping to serve around 20 people a week. In the first year, 4,000 visitors visited the dine-in entertainment experience. When asked why they decided to open a dinner show with no experience, Thomas Etheridge said that it was a matter of survival. They couldn't make money living off the land and had to think of a new idea. They had plenty of assets, but no actual cash. A friend had asked them to entertain 24 visitors from France who wanted to see something of the Old West. Cheryl cooked a barbecue dinner, Thomas showed the guests some cowboy stuff and hired musicians to play music. And the response alone convinced them that it could work. After less than a year, they would expand the ranch with the construction of a $500,000, 900 square foot opera house, hoping to attract even more people. Currently, visitors would ride a chuck wagon to an outdoor amphitheater for the show and dinner. This indoor opera house would provide opportunities for 350 people to experience the show regardless of the weather. By 2001, they were expecting more than 30,000 people to visit the attraction, making it one of the fastest growing tourist attractions in the state. Thomas Etheridge would be the master of ceremonies for the dinners, while Cheryl would take tickets and reservations. Though they said most of their success came from the cast of employees who shared a common love of the state's Western heritage. Entertaining the crowd each night, the Prairie Rose Wranglers told bad jokes and played music. The venue would continue to expand with museums, RV camping spots, and each year become more and more popular. Prairie Rose was now a major attraction, and was drawing more tourists from outside the region than any other attraction in the area, and offered good clean family fun, while also making a nice profit. The Etheridge family would not stop here, they had big plans for the future. In 2004, the Prairie Rose would launch plans for a second location in Branson. These plans were scrapped as attention was changed to focus on something bigger. On December 19, 2004, the next project for the Etheridges was announced, Wild West World.
Rather ambitious. Going from like a red... God damn it. Alright. You get all of... There. Going. Rather ambitious, going from like a restaurant to a theme park. Like a restaurant entertainment experience.
This planned 30-acre cowboy-themed park would be built around 20 minutes away from the restaurant in Park City. Set to break ground in 2005 and open in 2006, Wild West World was estimated to cost $15 to $17 million, create 150 seasonal jobs, and bring in an estimated $50 million in its first 5 years. The couple had seen the popularity of the American cowboy and thought it would be the greatest opportunity to expand that theme to bring in even more tourism. 100 acres of land was purchased with plenty of room for expansion east of I-135 and south of 77th Street. The initial concept called for 20 adult rides and 10 children's rides, all themed and would include a roller coaster with wagon-themed trains, be multiple themed restaurants, a theater, and would have daily longhorn cattle drives through a town square. The new attraction was planned to be open May through September, and excitement for the new project was at an all-time high. At the time of the announcement, the Etheridges had secured half the financing needed for the project, planning to be the only shareholders. They had already spent about $1.5 million on consulting fees and plans, forming the Wild West World Inc. company to keep it separate from the original dinner experience. The plans for the park would be drawn up by BDR Design Group and its founder Bruce Robinson, a leader in the world of leisure and entertainment design, working with multiple theme parks, entertainment venues such as the Island in Pigeon Forge, and many more. Most recently, they worked on the Lost Island theme park. Robinson said that his goal in designing this new park was to create a captivating Wild West experience, and there would be a 3.5-story waving cowboy sign planned for the interstate to bring people in. Within, there would be a train, stagecoach rides, a carousel, and 2 roller coasters. A 25-year-old refurbished log flume that had previously been located at Western Playland in New Mexico, along with an Old West town square and 1,300-seat music venue. The best economic consultant services were brought in, and it seemed viable. The same company that did the consultations would regularly work for Disney, Universal, and all the big players in the industry, and deemed that they could potentially attract 288,000 visitors in the very first year. It wouldn't all go without trouble. Thomas Etheridge would delay breaking ground on Wild West World after struggling to find full financing for the project. Instead of starting on May 1st, it was promised that it would happen sometime this year, as he searched for the remaining amount of the $15 million he needed to create the park, while also looking for deals to have a hotel and several restaurants on board nearby. He consistently remained positive that the project would happen, saying that financing a project of this size was complicated and often ran into snags. But it didn't mean it wouldn't happen. Banks had already pledged around half the $15 million needed, and they were pledging their personal wealth as well as that of the Prairie Rose restaurant to try and make up the rest. By August, financing of the original $15 million appeared to be in place, with future plans to expand even further already set in stone, with a water park and more rides. $10 million for the project came from investors abroad, specifically to finance the rides, as rides are deemed a liability to American investors. While it was deemed too wet to move dirt, Thomas Etheridge proclaimed that Monday, August 15, 2005 was the official start of construction for his Wild West World theme park, and an opening date was set for May 5, 2007. Etheridge conducted the ceremony in his over-the-top style, stating some people call him the P.T. Barnum of cowboys, and he was betting big, expecting it to pay off when those 280,000 people visited the park in its first year. He often called it the only fully Western theme park anywhere in the world. It was not.
Here we are, driving down the road, and all of a sudden, bang! Oh!
Going. Cowboys don't get blackmailed.
Just a few weeks after ground had broken, Thomas Etheridge called a news conference. He announced to officials that he had served more than 3 years in prison for securities fraud in the 1980s.
What?
A former associate of his was about to go public with the story, but he stated that cowboys don't get blackmailed. There was also local TV working on a story on Etheridge's past. He wanted to lay out his past before the story aired. Supported by his wife, he said his plans for the $15 million Wild West theme park would remain unchanged, and he had no plans to hide his past. He said he often spoke about his time in prison to church groups for years, and his story appeared in the 2004 book, Real Men, Real Faith, about Christians undergoing trials in their lives, which he regularly handed out to people. This book details some of Thomas Etheridge's history. As told by him, let me give you the quick version. He grew up in a cattle-raising family in Texas and devoted all his spare time to business, forming his skills in bartering, trading, and selling. Making a profit, fixing up cars, oil rigs, or anything he could. He was doing big business by the time he turned 21. By 1984, he created and sold his oil and drilling companies and put all his money in investments and banking. That was when he got a visit from SEC agents. Etheridge would be facing a lengthy indictment for security violations revolving around the merchant banking activities and his investments his company was involved in. When they came calling, he was overseas. Etheridge would not return to the USA. He stated, as advised by his attorneys, to stay out of the country, and he went through Europe to Hong Kong, Singapore, and later Africa, before moving to Central America and starting an aloe vera plantation. His family and children were in Texas still, under enormous pressure, but would eventually join him in Central America. During a business trip to Canada to sell products, Texas agents raided his plantation, and they would remain stuck in Canada, where they would start a new business, weight reduction clinics. Now in 1985, Thomas Etheridge was a wanted man by the American authorities, as well as Scotland Yard and Interpol. According to him in his book, he would make the decision to return to Texas and try and resolve his problems, accepting extradition and plan to prove his innocence, ending up in a Texas jail. During this time, his wife and family would leave him, his houses, businesses, and assets were gone, and he would be facing huge jail time. Throughout, he claims he insisted his innocence, yet everyone believed he was guilty. The book states it was here, in jail, that Thomas Etheridge found the church and Jesus. In 1989, while in jail after many court hearings, according to the book, he pleaded no contest to securities fraud and would serve over 3 years in prison. Throughout, he had maintained that he was innocent, saying that he pleaded no contest to the final cases as he had no will or money left to fight. The charges involved selling unregistered securities and making false and misleading statements in selling securities to several residents. It was this year on his release that he met Cheryl through the prison ministry, and shortly after they were married, and he moved to her home near Wichita, Kansas. Together they would start over with their ranching roots, purchasing 40 acres and building a home, and it will be here that the thinking outside of the box attempt at a restaurant will begin. Over a decade after being released from prison in 1999 with the Prairie Rose Chuck Wagon Supper, and the family would continue to make church a major part of their life.
That's ridiculous.
Park City officials at the news conference said they had been aware of Etheridge's past since last year. Others stated that Etheridge had volunteered the information to them in the past, and what happened in the past was the past. Wild West World would go ahead as planned, and those involved stood by him. By December, the giant cowboy sign was up and ready for the park to open the following year. In November 2005, the park would greet the arrival of the first ride, the O.D. Hopkins Water Log Flume, which would reach heights of over 50 feet. The final packages of rides coming to the attraction was confirmed at the 2005 IAAPA Expo, totaling $7 million, the majority of which would come from Zamperla, with additional rides from Chance. As the park got closer to opening, more details of what would come would be promised. A spinning coaster costing $1.2 million was said to be the highlight, and the park proudly stated it was just like Primeval Whirl at Disney's Animal Kingdom, though this one was purchased used from Myrtle Beach Grand Prix, where it had opened in 1999. There was also the second roller coaster, a cowboy-themed Wacky Worm. Absolutely terrifying looking. Just look at it. It is horrifying. They had hopes to purchase a big wooden coaster or a big steel one soon after opening, stating that they wanted it to become the signature attraction and it would be in the $3 to $4 million price range and ready to open 2 years after the park debuts. Not one ride was really created for the park at opening. They were all off-the-shelf models that could be found elsewhere, but each would be fitted with some sort of cowboy theme. And some, as I said, absolutely terrifying. The centerpiece of the park would be the Johnny Western Theater, which would open earlier in September 2006. Named after Wichita's Western recording and TV star and friend of Thomas Etheridge. Events would begin to be held in the venue right away as the theme park was built around it. The Etheridge's new church group would also move into the building. The theme park was ahead of schedule, according to the owners, and rides were being installed and excitement was at an all-time high for the Wild West world. They also continually stated that work was underway planning the extreme thrill coaster that would come to the park in 2 years. Thomas Etheridge stated that he invited you to get ready to see the world come to the state of Kansas. The project manager for the attraction would be Ron Burney, former manager of Kentucky Kingdom. The final park design was done by Law Kingdon Architects. From concept to creation, it had taken just a little over 2 years to create Wild West World. They continued to maintain that they expected from May to October 500,000 visitors would visit the United States' brand new theme park, generating $15.5 million in revenue. Wild West World expected to turn a profit in the very first year. They stated they had already sold $750,000 worth of season passes in January 2007. A month later, they were stating that they had sold 10,000 season passes and the revenue had already topped $1 million, though half of that came from events that were running at the theater. Everyone believed they were going to bring a lot of excitement to Wichita. The park was nearly ready, and Etheridge said that he had been working 20 hours a day for months, and he and Cheryl had poured their hearts, souls, and lives into the project. Just as exciting was the boom to the local area, expecting huge revenue to start pouring in soon. From hotels to restaurants and shopping, the economy nearby was about to get its massive boost when the park was opened. A week before opening, a group of kids aged 8 to 18 got to experience the park. Well, the rides which were ready anyway, and the reaction was mixed. Some of them had been to bigger parks and were not very impressed, while others thought it was the best thing ever. Thomas Etheridge knew that this would just be the start, and the park had to constantly expand and grow each year to bring people back, and continued to insist that our new highlight was coming with the large coaster planned for the banks of the park's lake in 2009. Now stated as a $4 million wooden coaster. He said that if the park was not a success in its first year, he would be homeless. Industry experts, however, continued to tell him for what he had built, the plan would work. The problem was, it did not cost $15 million, the budget had soared to $28 million, nearly double. Though he was still told the investment was worth it and reasonable for what he had made, and that they were on the right path. Wild West World now reported they had sold 34,000 season passes in the past 18 months. With a 10-year tax abatement that was given from Park City, expectations for the money to pour in were high. Behind the scenes though, unknown to everyone on the outside, the park was already financially struggling. Over budget at $28 million, billed as the first theme park in Kansas, and the first all-Western themed amusement park in the world, Wild West World opened on May 5th, 2007.
Things never go as
Do you
planned.
know who
Oh
helped
god damn
lead
it,
the
not again.
charge to restrict abortion?
Back off. All these damn political ads, I swear to god. I just want to watch
As visitors walked through the park, they would mostly find standard rides in a pretty nice layout around a lake in the Texas, Oklahoma, and Kansas sections of the park. Opening day had 2 rides not ready, the now called Prairie Plunge Log Flume and the Condor Ride, as they were still waiting for parts from overseas delayed by customs. They also blamed the weather for the delays, even though they had stated many times how ahead of schedule the park was. The park anticipated 8,000 to 10,000 people on opening day. 4,500 people went. High winds and clouds were blamed on the lower than expected attendance. The park was now saying they had sold 15,000 season passes before, and most visitors had used them. The response to the park was that it was pretty good, better than the outdated Joyland anyway. Though small and nothing special, it had potential to grow.
Cowboys don't give up.
Wild West
Maybe you
World's
should.
first month was not good, with bad weather causing attendance to fall short of projections. Etheridge said he sure picked a bad month to open and should have waited till closer to the summer. The state also had a deadly tornado the night before the grand opening that did not help. In the first month, the park's marketing director, Ryan Cole, resigned, blaming a poor marketing plan and micromanagement from the Etheridges before he moved to a job at Hershey Park, saying Thomas needed to listen to his staff. While he was good at business, he does not listen when it comes to the theme park side of the operation. At the same time, Chief Financial Officer for the park also stepped down for health reasons. And this was just the first month. Cole stated the park's attendance was at least 50% lower than expected. Etheridge, however, said the numbers are a little better than that. He insisted it was just the weather, and the tornadoes around opening didn't help. Over a month after opening, the mud-covered park, as landscaping was still yet to happen, finally opened one of the last 2 rides remaining. One of them would never open at all. They stated it was just too muddy to bring in a crane to finish it. 32 of the park's first 37 days were rainy or overcast, and it definitely didn't help. But Wild West World cost nearly twice as much to build as planned due to underestimated construction costs, delays due to weather, and rising interest rates, along with the park owners spending money without a thought or budget. Attendance was off by over 1,000 from projections, with an average of 1,400 a day actually visiting, but the Etheridges remain confident, working day and night to try and make it work, insisting that the park would meet projections and July and August crowds would make up for it, and there was no problem. The park would introduce coupons for cheaper entrance to try and entice people in. During that first month, more employees left, and turnover was high, including the director of food services and the gaming and retail director. The opinion of the park had begun to turn, with many already pointing out its failures and that it wouldn't make it. When asked about issues with its micromanaging, Etheridge said, "I totally control everything, every little bit of it. Everything I've got is on the line. $8 million was owed to Kansas banks and the Small Business Administration. Millions more to international banks, and they were heavily in debt." The Etheridges had also borrowed against their house and insurance policies. He had often been traveling to Europe to try and gain more funding for the project. Despite strain in the first month, he insisted that everything was paid up to date and investors were happy. The banks agreed and said it would be short-sighted to have concerns already when it was a great product. The reality was, behind the scenes, the park was scrounging for money even before it opened, but they believed it would all pay off in the end.
Cowboys sometimes give up.
On Sunday, July 8th, just over 2 months since opening, reporters asked if the park had a future. The Etheridges said it would not close. The next day, on July 9th, 2007, announced by Thomas and his lawyer, Wild West World would close and file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection.
Literally
the company stated they were looking for a buyer for the park immediately, and that the park would be returning. The blame lay on the weather, as 50 of the 60 operating days had poor weather. Never before had a theme park that opened close so quickly. A buyer had to be found by the end of the year, and everyone who invested with the bankruptcy announced were now searching for ways to recoup their money. The closure came as a surprise. Some employees said the weather wasn't the real problem, that Wild West World was the worst managed place they had ever worked.
Ooh.
It turned out that the numbers thrown around for season ticket sales were drastically exaggerated, with about 3,000 actually sold. If the park would ever return did not look likely, as whoever would buy the park would have to settle the debts and still pay for the rides. Thomas Etheridge, the man who had an answer for everything and could sell anything, was quiet, declining to speak as he believed the media were treating him unfairly and always twisted what he said. Until recently, the area embraced, celebrated, and encouraged the future of tourism that he promised, praising his vision. Now, with a closed and failed park, the story had changed. When he announced in 2005 about his past, the city and investors, along with the public, stood by him, talking about the dream of rebuilding one's life after trouble. The reports then focused on his success, rather than the failures. He was a man who had overcome difficulties, but was about to make the area better, and he had changed. A person you trusted because he was honest with you and upfront. Now, the finger was pointed directly at him for this failure. Though many did not believe that anything illegal occurred, just bad decisions. Others commented that he had put himself as the face of this project, a hero for the area, and that he was now acting surprised that he was the one that people were blaming. Regardless, the Kansas Securities Commission would open an investigation into Etheridge's investments. Banks allowed employees to cash their final checks, well, most of them anyway, and lawyers for the family insisted that he had nothing to hide and was cooperating fully with the investigation. Less than a month after the theme park closed, the Etheridges were forced to close the Prairie Rose Chuck Wagon Supper, the place that inspired the theme park in the first place, with the attraction, the family home, and items from a cowboy museum at the site would be put up for auction. The attendance at the dinner show had been declining somewhat in the last few years, since the family had focused on Wild West World, but was still selling out shows regularly. The lawsuits were about to come fast. Many of the smaller investors for the park came from Thomas Etheridge's church, and many of them no longer believed in him, hurt and felt deceived that they had lost their savings to this dream and would never see their money
no more
again.
faith, huh?
Just months before the park opened, Thomas Etheridge was urging friends at his church to invest their money into the financially strapped theme park, calling it a good investment as he struggled to cover payroll, and the calls were beginning that Etheridge was taking advantage of people. Knowing that the park was struggling before it had even opened, he would later claim he never persuaded anyone to invest, that they were offering to help as they believed in the project. They had believed in Thomas as they had seen the banks do. While looking in from the outside, you couldn't tell, but the park had been in financial trouble dating back to late 2006. There was even a point when Etheridge tried to sell the whole park before it had opened. By September 2007, after the park closed, the church had moved out and into a motel, and it would be these members of the church who invested in the park that would be the main group that would back the court case. Surprisingly, in August, the park had a potential buyer.
Really?
A new company from California that was ready to offer $12 million to buy Wild West World. Parks America of Santa Monica, a sister company of Great American Theme Parks, had submitted a letter of interest and plans to reopen for 2008. After visiting the park, they did not make an offer, but said they would make one within a month if the park's creditors were willing to wait that long. The aftermath of the abandoned theme park was a huge mess. The church sued Wild West World for land they had bought, banks tried to seize rides to reclaim losses, the Karate Kid's dad sued, and Pepsi sued for $2.5 million over a 10-year park sponsorship agreement. The IRS got involved over unpaid taxes. Next, the FBI got involved in the investigation.
Oh my God.
A deadline was set for the sale of the park for September 28, 2007, with Parks America eventually backing out of the purchase, marking the end of the line for Wild West World. Everything
The
that could be
IRS,
sold
the
would be.
FBI,
Rides went to
personal
small amusement
lawsuits,
parks around the US and even abroad. Hershend purchased the Sidewinder ride for $475,000 and moved it to Wild Adventures. Other attractions can still be found operating today. Restoration Farms, Thomas Etheridge's other company, would also file for bankruptcy, and what was left after the liquidation would be put up for auction. While Wild West World's story had ended incredibly quickly, the issues would continue for the Etheridges.
Like what? Oh, god damn it.
Wix. Get.
I don't give a damn. Once upon a time in the West.
The remaining land and assets were eventually sold to the AHG Group, a Florida investment company specializing in casinos. They themselves would later get sued relating to broken promises with the land. At one point, there was some hope that the park would reopen with new rides. Still, many didn't believe that Thomas Etheridge intended to rip people off. More so, that his ego believed that he couldn't fail with his idea. Those most hurt, though, saw him now as a con man who had pulled the same trick again. Immediately after the park's closure, the Etheridge's family left the area and could not be found. He had begun working as a manager at an alpaca ranch near San Antonio and refused to take any questions. He would then go into business with that ranch, using the ranch owner's family money to expand and trying to convince them to help him take a trip to Dubai for a fiber marketing trip. One report says that the alpaca ranch alone yielded him and his wife $170,000 from August 2007, at the very same time as Wild West World was still unraveling a month after closing. While the weather did play a part, it couldn't be blamed for the end of Wild West World. It could only be that after going over budget, which the park didn't have any backup plan for, the place was undercapitalized and unprepared for the slow start, and the fact Wild West World just wasn't really that good or special didn't help. Incredibly high payroll costs, long operating hours, and, ultimately, a lack of funds were the final nail in the coffin for the park before it had even opened. Wild West World never had a chance to succeed, the shortest lived theme park. Today, shells of buildings remain the same, abandoned. Much, though, has been demolished. The Prairie Rose Dinner Show was sold and turned into a year-round venue for a cowboy church, and continued the Chuck Wagon Suppers, eventually stopping them over a decade later, and today still offers a variety of music concerts and dinners. The golden entrepreneur of the area had lost everything, and the risk had not paid off.
Like I said, he was a bit too ambitious for his own good. Alright, what happens now? Park's closed. He's lost everything.
In late April 2009, Thomas Etheridge was arrested at the airport on a Kansas warrant as the fraud investigation had finally wrapped up. Kansas law required that investors must receive an accurate picture of a business's financial status before investing, and this had not been provided to some who invested. The biggest issue being his use of the church members' money and the claim that he did not provide them with enough information about his past to those investing. Wild West World's money from late 2006 was non-existent. They were transferring money from their other businesses and looking for a way to sell the park behind the scenes, while telling investors it was a great financial success and they would get a good return after the initial startup. Those that had praised him during his creation now said that they were not surprised, and those that stood by him when he came out with his past said the history of the man speaks for itself. Some said they believed he preyed on church people's consciences and used religion to swindle them out of money. Others, Wild West World did not look like a theme park that should have cost $26 million, and claimed that he was using the money for himself while pretending that the park needed more. Each person testifying against him did mention that they felt pressured that the money was urgent. People who had been close to him said that they doubted he would feel bad if he ever did come back to Wichita to face his charges. If he did, they expected him to be angry, verbal, and self-righteous, saying that he was the true victim, believing that he truly did try and help the area with his theme park. Others felt pity for him, saying they saw the truth inside, that his spirit was just misguided and once again ended in disaster for him. While people who invested lost everything, so did he. Again. Many, though, were not convinced, saying it was all just a long con. Others, that he truly believed he could make something special, yet when it struggled, went back to his old ways. Thomas Etheridge was arrested on 10 counts of securities fraud, totaling $800,000, much of which was raised by the church he attended. The hour-long opening statement stated that Etheridge omitted or represented facts to entice investors into giving him money. More details came out on his early arrest during this trial. First, a felony theft for bouncing a check in Texas, where he had served 6 months in jail in the late 70s. Second, for the previously announced jail time for securities fraud in the 80s, where he was charged with dozens of counts of securities fraud, including engaging in a business. Investors here were told they would have 25% returns, and the company was backed by a $5 million Swiss bank account, none of which was true. The operation was reported as a scheme where investors were being paid off with money contributed by later investors, and much of the investors' cash was spent on personal and travel expenses. Many questioned where that $28 million actually went. During this trial, there were many contradictions compared to what was written in the faith book, including that he was already a devout Christian and often quoting the Bible, and that he was actually arrested in Canada on charges of being an illegal alien and deported back to the USA. He pleaded not guilty and said investors would have gotten their money, claiming to be a misunderstood pioneer of the banking industry who had been victimized. As he testified, he said that he had never intended to use private investors to finance the park due to his past experience, but was forced to when the park was struggling. He maintained that he was innocent and continued to say he was also innocent back in the late 80s with his earlier issues. During the trial, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and suffered a stroke, causing delays. He was convicted on February 10, 2010 of 7 counts of securities fraud and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He was paroled on July 29, 2013. The story of Wild West World is not really just one of a failed theme park, but one of a man, the cowboy entrepreneur whose theme park was one of the quickest failures in the industry, and a man who had it all and had lost it multiple times. Did he dream big, gamble and fail, or did he con people for money who trusted him and paid the price? The answer varies depending on who you ask. Today, whatever the truth, Wild West World still sits abandoned in Kansas.
Wow.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Expedition Extinct.
God damn. This guy's wild ass history, like fleeing the country and whatnot. Getting charged with, was it securities fraud? And then later more securities fraud. What else is there in this channel? Oh man. Liberty Land? Is that anything like Freedom Land? Florida's weird controversial theme park, Nightmare Films, God's World, and Rock and Roll Pirates World. Tallest water slide. Las Vegas's failed most immersive attraction. UK's strange abandoned Universal Studios? Oh yeah. The Holy Land theme park, which we saw earlier. Six Flags Atlantis, Hollywood, Florida, closed by a hurricane. Sure. The history of the weird construction theme park, Diggerland. What? I gotta see that next time. Wet and Wild Las Vegas, closed for no reason. Man, theme park history really is wild. Alright, but that's gonna be all from me for today. Thank you everyone for stopping by. Hope y'all had fun. I know I did. But yeah, thanks for being here. Thank you to anyone watching the VOD. And thank you as always to the lovely fortune tellers watching this before I stream. Alright, let's see who's on right now so I can go raid. Nothing but the big shots. Oh wait, hang on. Alright, let's go say hi to Leaf, I guess. Do. Alright, start raid. But yeah, thank you once again for stopping by. Remember to hydrate, rest up, eat tasty things, all that good jazz. And peace.